I'm not used to talking about these things out loud. Never have been. But here we are. So I'll just say it plain. My name's Frank. I turned 53 last winter. Spent most of my adult life working construction, first as a laborer, then managing a small crew. That was never something I planned, but it's the path I fell into, you know? One job, then the next, and before you know it, 3 decades are gone. I did okay. Made decent money. Paid off the house. Raised our son, David. My wife, Linda, she was home with him until he was about 10, then she got a part-time job at some office. Nothing fancy. We lived like everybody else around here. A small suburb not far from Lake Erie. Quiet place. People mow their lawns on Saturdays and wave when you drive by. I'm retired now. Took an early retirement package because my back started going out, and the doctor said I should stop pushing it. Linda and we never had those big retirement plans like taking cruises or moving to Florida. We talked vaguely about visiting national parks in an RV, but we never pinned it down. The idea of doing nothing was weird for me. I've worked most my life, so the first few weeks of retirement felt wrong. I'd wake up at 5 out of habit, have my coffee, then stand around wondering what the hell to do. Linda said, "Why not fix up the house?" I guess she was being practical. We had scuffs on the walls, chipped paint on the porch, all those little things you ignore while you're busy paying bills. So that became my routine. I started in the garage, new paint, reorganized tools, maybe put in some shelves. The garage is my space, you know? Where I keep everything, old nails and coffee cans, scrap wood from past projects. I like that stuff. Calms my mind. When I'm sanding a board or rolling paint on drywall, I can just breathe. No big ideas swirling in my head. Just the task. Anyway, it was a Monday morning in late summer, maybe a bit warm. I'd been at it since 8. Had the radio on, some classic rock station, volume low. Linda was inside, I think flipping through catalogs. She'd gotten into this interior design phase, new lamps, new lighting fixtures, new accent pillows. I barely knew what any of that meant. She'd show me pictures in these catalogs, and I'd nod. She'd say, "We could brighten the living room." Or, "I want a statement piece for the entryway." I'd just say, "Sure, if that's what you want." I didn't mind. Truth is, I didn't pay much attention. I was more concerned with my paint rollers and drop cloths. The day before, she'd mentioned some guy she met, an expert on home lighting, she said. She wanted him to come by, look at our living room, maybe give her suggestions on fixtures. She'd been calling him the lighting pro, or the expert. I'd roll my eyes a little, but not so she'd see. I thought it was just another silly project. I figured, hey, if it makes her happy, let her knock herself out. She told me he had fancy catalogs, and maybe we'd find something that fit the room better than the old floor lamp we got on sale years ago. None of it mattered much to me. We already had a lamp that worked fine, but Linda was fixated on the idea of perfect lighting. So, that Monday, I was out in the garage with my paint tray on a workbench. I'd popped open a fresh gallon of primer. The plan was to coat the walls with primer, let it dry, then maybe do a light beige topcoat. Linda wanted the garage walls white, but I had some leftover beige from the bedroom, so I said, "Good enough. We'd save a few bucks." She didn't argue. Usually, she'd pick fights over details, like if the color wasn't bright enough, or if it clashed with something. But lately, she'd been distracted. Looking at her phone a lot, flipping through magazines, texting. I just assumed it was her new hobby, searching for design inspiration. I remember that particular morning, the sunlight coming in through the open garage door, dust floating in the air, the smell of paint strong. I kept thinking maybe I should open a window or get a fan going. My radio was playing something, maybe Bruce Springsteen or Tom Petty. I can't remember exactly. The day felt normal, if a bit dull. Just me, the walls, the radio, the drip of paint in the tray. I finished a section, stood back to look. Not a pro job, but I'd done worse. Then I heard this little squeak. Like our kitchen door opening. It's an old door, sticks in the frame. Usually, Linda's the one complaining about that squeak, wanting me to fix it, and I always say I'll do it later. Anyway, I heard it, but didn't think much. Could have been her stepping out to grab the mail or take out trash. I just kept rolling paint. Heard some muffled sound, like voices. Maybe the radio was messing with my hearing, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention. I dipped the roller again, tried to get an even coat. That's when something just felt off. You know that sense? The hair on the back of your neck doesn't stand up or anything dramatic, but something inside you says, "Listen up." So I paused the roller, turned off the radio. I listened. Quiet. Then, faintly, I heard two voices inside. Hers and a man's. Talking low, almost whispering. That by itself wasn't so weird, she'd said some lighting guy might drop by. But why were they whispering? I put the roller down. My hands were covered in paint, my shirt stained. I wiped my palms on a rag. The door from the garage leads into a short hallway that connects to the kitchen. Past that is the living room. If you stand in the hallway and peek around the corner, you can see part of the living room couch, but not much else. I stepped inside, real quiet, just out of curiosity. I wasn't suspicious, exactly, but something in me wanted to see what they were doing. Maybe it was the hush in their voices, or the tone. Hard to describe. The hallway smelled like fresh coffee. Linda must have brewed a pot. It was almost noon by then. I moved carefully, not sure why I was being sneaky. I just felt like if they were whispering, maybe they didn't want me to interrupt. But my steps on the floor probably gave me away anyway. Then I heard a soft laugh. Hers, but different. Not the usual short chuckle she gives me. This was more private. I can't say I remember the last time she laughed that way. Something turned in my stomach. A tightness in my chest. I stood there, holding my breath, paint drying on my arms. My heart started hammering. Part of me felt embarrassed, like I was eavesdropping on a conversation I shouldn't hear. But I also felt this dread. A few seconds passed. Then I heard him say something like, "Just relax." Very soft. My mind went blank for a moment. I eased forward another step, peering around the edge of the wall. I could see the back of the couch, the coffee table, the corner of the TV. Linda was on the floor, her back turned to me. Kneeling. And a man was standing just in front of her, one foot on the rug, one foot almost hidden. I saw his hand move down, touching her shoulder. She said something I couldn't make out. Time froze. That's not a cliché, it just literally felt like my body locked up. I didn't even breathe. My eyes flicked to the side, saw a half-open catalog, some fancy brochures spread out. Then I looked back. She was on her knees in front of him. He had neat hair, maybe gel in it, wearing a nice collared shirt. Some samples or something were on the couch. It felt like a punch to the gut. My ears were ringing. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 10 seconds or a minute. Enough to see it. Enough to understand what I was looking at. No illusions. No question marks. I knew. My wife of almost 30 years. On her knees in front of a man we barely knew. The so-called lighting expert. I took a step into the living room, arms still dripping paint. He looked over first, saw me, and sort of stiffened. She twisted around, saw me, and her mouth fell open. I didn't speak. Couldn't. I think my lips parted, but no sound came out. She scrambled up, grabbing at her blouse or shirt or whatever. He pulled up his pants. They looked like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar, except it was a million times worse. That was the moment, everything changed. Everything. But in that first second, I was just standing there, like my brain was trying to reboot. No anger. No yelling. Just emptiness. No tears, no heartbreak, not yet. Just a hollow shock. I didn't ask them any questions. I didn't want to. Couldn't handle it. I turned, walked back to the garage, thinking, this can't be real. But it was. I felt the lump in my throat, thick like tar, as I pushed open the garage door. The paint roller was on the bench, half dry. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might black out. I rested my hands on the bench, stared at the cans of paint, tried to breathe. The warm air felt suffocating. I heard them muttering inside, maybe scrambling around. I didn't know if she'd come after me, or if he'd try to bolt. I didn't care right then. I looked around the garage. Saw the sledgehammer leaning by the wall, old, heavy, used it to break up concrete once. The handle was nicked and worn. The head had flecks of rust. My eyes locked on it, and for some reason that was all I could see. I felt a black wave of rage building inside me. The kind that makes your vision narrow, your teeth clench. I picked it up, surprised at how steady my hands were. Then I walked back inside. Didn't wipe off the paint or anything. My boots left tracks on the floor. Each step felt deliberate, heavier than usual. My head was buzzing, that ringing in my ears was worse than ever. I wasn't thinking about consequences or what comes next. I just had this uncontrollable urge to destroy something. Not them, God forbid. But something. I followed the hallway again, into the living room. They were both standing now. He was trying to get his shoes on, stumbling, fumbling with his belt. She had her hands on her mouth. Couldn't look me in the eye. I said nothing. No words, no yelling, no demands. I just swung that sledgehammer at the glass coffee table. That table she'd picked out after searching a dozen furniture stores, bragging about how modern and elegant it was. It shattered. A high-pitched crash. Tiny shards flew everywhere. She screamed. Not a word, just a scream. He yelped like a frightened animal. I swung again, aiming at the fancy vase we got from some trip, can't remember where. Smashed it to pieces. The shards bounced off the hardwood. I turned to the lamp. It was a tall, designer lamp, cost a small fortune. I lifted the sledgehammer, brought it down on the stand. It toppled, the light bulb popped, the stand bent. She screamed again. Stop, stop, oh God, Frank, stop! I heard her, but it didn't register. I was in a different place, some blind fury where everything felt slow and unstoppable. He took off toward the door, still zipping his pants. I heard the front door slam. She was still there, wailing now. What are you doing? I turned, saw the TV. Big flat screen we'd splurged on. I heaved the sledgehammer straight through the screen. Sparks, shattered plastic. I heard Linda shriek. You're crazy! But I didn't touch her. Not once. I just wanted to destroy every object she loved, everything that made up her perfect little home. The home that, apparently, wasn't enough for her. When it was over, the living room looked like a war zone. Broken glass, busted furniture, shards of pottery. Paint splatters from my arms. My breathing was ragged, sweat pouring down my face. She stood in the corner by the fireplace, shaking, tears running. I gripped the hammer tight, stared at the mess. Then I just dropped it. Let it fall with a dull thud. I walked out. Didn't say a word. That was the beginning. Or the end, depending on how you see it. I sat on the porch steps right after, feeling the adrenaline drain out of me. My hands shook. I could still hear Linda crying inside. Couldn't hear the other guy, he must have bolted. Neighbors might have heard the crashing and yelling, but nobody showed up. Maybe they were too scared, or maybe nobody was home. Hard to say. I just sat there, staring at the cracks in the concrete, paint still caked on my arms, sledgehammer lying somewhere behind me. A few minutes passed, though it felt longer. Eventually, Linda opened the front door. I heard the hinge squeak. She stood in the doorway, eyes red, face blotchy. I could feel her looking at me, but I didn't turn my head. She whispered, Frank, and then stopped. Like she didn't know what to say next. I didn't help her. I stayed silent. She took a shaky breath. Frank, I'm sorry. It's not what you think. I almost laughed at that. How many times have we heard that line in movies? I didn't laugh, though. My throat felt too tight. So I just spat on the ground, swallowed, and waited. She came down one step, then stopped again. We were still a few feet apart. Her voice cracked. "Frank, please. Just look at me." I didn't look. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that image, her kneeling in front of him. That man's hand on her shoulder. My stomach twisted. I shook my head, muttered, "Don't." She stood there, hugging herself, sniffling. I half expected her to blow up at me, scream about the damage to the house. But she just stood, quiet, like she wasn't sure how to handle me. Maybe she'd never seen me like that. Hell, I'd never seen me like that. Eventually, she went back inside. I stayed on that porch until the sun started going down. My mind was blank, except for this dull ache in my chest. For the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No plan, no solution, no tomorrow. I could have walked in, demanded answers, demanded she pack her things and leave. But it felt pointless. The part of me that might have cared was numb. I walked in after dark. The living room lights were off. I caught the faint glow of the kitchen overhead. The living room was still wrecked, glass crunching under my boots. It smelled like dust and heartbreak. I headed to the kitchen. She was there, sitting at the table, staring at her phone like it might save her. A cold cup of coffee in front of her. She looked up, eyes rimmed with tears again, but she didn't cry anymore. "I'll clean it up," she said quietly. "I don't know what to say to you right now." I grabbed a beer from the fridge, twisted the top off, and stood by the counter. I took a long swig, still silent. She tried again. "Frank, I never meant." I cut her off by raising my hand. "Don't. Not tonight." My voice sounded dead, even to my own ears. She closed her mouth, nodded. She went back to staring at her phone. After a moment, she set it aside, folded her arms on the table, and rested her head on them. She stayed like that, quiet, maybe crying, I couldn't tell. I finished my beer in a few gulps, grabbed another. My mind started spiraling, 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? Why him? Why me? But mostly, why was I so blind? But I shoved those thoughts away. I didn't want to face them. I went back out to the porch and drank until midnight. She never came out. The next day, I woke up on the couch in the den, stiff as a board. Hadn't slept in our bed. Couldn't bear the idea. I got up around 6, like usual, made coffee. Sipped it alone. She was somewhere upstairs. The living room was partially cleaned, some of the big shards were gone, but you could still see the damage. The busted TV, the cracked lamp base, the coffee table reduced to a metal frame and random chunks of glass. I didn't linger. I didn't want to see that place. Outside, the air smelled like rain might be coming. Overcast sky. I went to the garage, looked at the half-painted walls, the roller tray with dried primer. The sledgehammer was lying on the floor near the door. I felt a wave of shame at the sight of it. But also, I couldn't deny, I was still angry. Anger is easier than pain, I guess. I spent the morning ignoring everything. I tinkered with an old shelf, hammered nails into a board that didn't need nails, just to keep busy. Around noon, I heard her car start. I glanced out the garage window. She backed out without looking my way, drove off. Probably to God knows where. Maybe to him. Maybe to a friend's place. Didn't matter to me. I stayed home the rest of the day, half expecting her to come back with some explanation or apology. She didn't. My phone stayed quiet, except for a spam call. I realized I hadn't spoken a word to anyone since last night. My throat felt rusty. The house was silent, the living room in ruins. In the kitchen, her coffee cup still sat on the table, a ring of old coffee around the inside. That small detail angered me more than I want to admit. Like she could just leave her mess, go off with that guy, while I'm stuck in the wreckage. Later that evening, she came back. I was in the den again, trying to watch something on my laptop, ignoring the rest of the house. She walked in, looked at me from the doorway. I glanced up. She said, I'm gonna stay in the guest room. I just nodded. She paused like she wanted me to stop her or to argue. I said nothing. She turned and walked away. That was the pattern for the next day. 2, minimal talk, separate rooms, a tension so thick it felt like the walls might crack. I slept in the den, she slept in the guest room. The living room was a total no-go zone for both of us. She cleared away most of the debris, but the big broken pieces of furniture remained. It was like a crime scene frozen in time, waiting for an insurance adjuster. Except there was no insurance for betrayal. 2 days after I smashed the living room, the phone rang around dinner time. She was in the kitchen, rummaging for something, and I heard her say, "David? Hey, honey. Yeah, he's here." My heart skipped. Our son. I realized I hadn't told him anything. Why would I? How do you call your kid and say, "Hey, I caught your mom with another man and smashed the house to pieces"? She talked softly, maybe telling him some version of the story. Her voice trembled, but I couldn't make out every word. Then she walked into the den, handed me the phone. I braced myself, put it to my ear. "Yeah?" I said. My voice came out rough. "Dad?" David's voice. "He's 26 now, living in another state. Haven't seen him in a bit. Mom says you broke some stuff. She said you've been on edge? What's going on?" I closed my eyes. "It's complicated," I said. "Maybe come by if you can." There was a pause, a bit of static. "I think I should, Dad. I'm worried." "Worried about me?" The sudden flash of anger hit me. "Fine. Whenever you can," I muttered, and I hung up. No normal goodbye. I handed the phone back to Linda and walked away. She called out, "Frank," but I didn't stop. I went outside to the yard, lit a cigarette even though I quit years ago. The taste was bitter. But I needed something to keep my hands from shaking. David arrived the next afternoon. He drove in from 2 states over, took him about 4 hours. I was in the garage again, messing with the leftover paint. Heard a car pull up, recognized his old Honda. Part of me was glad he came. Another part dreaded it. This was going to open a wound I wasn't ready to deal with. He walked in, gave me a hug. I patted his back, stepping away quickly. I could see the worry in his eyes. He's a good kid, stands about my height, same dark hair. But I saw the tension in his face. He said, "Dad, what's happening? Mom's messages were freaking me out." I looked at him, shrugged. Didn't know how to start. He glanced around the garage, saw the mess, old paint cans, the sledgehammer. Then he saw me, my face probably like a stone. "Dad?" he repeated. I said, "Let's go inside. I'll show you." That's all I managed. My voice felt robotic. We walked through the hallway into the living room. He stopped dead, staring at the destroyed furniture, the shattered TV, everything. Linda was off in the kitchen, silent. David turned to me, mouth open. "What the hell?" I didn't answer. Just folded my arms, stared at the remains. He looked from the broken lamp to the smashed table. "Mom said you did this." "Why?" I let out a breath. "Because I had to," I said, my voice flat. He stared at me, waiting for more. I didn't offer. Linda came in, took a place near the wall. She looked at David, her eyes swimming with guilt. David looked back and forth between us, confusion all over his face. Then, softly, Linda said, "We need to talk." David nodded. "Yeah. I think so." I said nothing. This was about as far as I could go without losing it. My eyes flicked to Linda, and I felt that surge of anger again. I clenched my jaw to keep it in check. David noticed, took a small step toward me. "Dad, let's sit," he said, like he was guiding a wounded animal. We ended up in the den, on the old couch there. Linda hovered by the doorway. David asked a few questions, stuff like, "What happened in the living room? Did you two fight?" Linda was quiet, so I finally just said it. "I caught her with someone else. That's all you need to know." David's face went pale. He turned to his mom. What? Mom? She lowered her head, tears in her eyes. He looked back at me. And you destroyed the place? I shrugged. I guess I did. He swallowed, ran a hand through his hair. Dad? That's insane. I didn't argue. It was insane. Linda started to sob, mumbling something about how it wasn't planned, she never meant to hurt anyone. I stared at the floor, refusing to let it get inside me. David tried to console her, awkwardly patting her shoulder. Then he turned to me. Okay, we gotta figure this out. You can't just do that. I bristled. It's done, I said. What's there to figure out? He looked exasperated. Dad, Mom said you haven't been the same since you retired. She said you're depressed, snapping at her, ignoring her. I gave a harsh laugh. Ignoring her? She told you that, huh? He shook his head, like trying to puzzle it out. She says she's been unhappy? For a long time. She said you don't listen? You just tinker with your tools, you. My anger flared. So that justifies this? Her kneeling for some slick salesman with catalogs? Linda let out a wounded sound. David looked torn, glancing from me to her. He said softly, It's not about justifying. It's about you both. This has been going on for a while. He hesitated. She told me there were problems for years, Dad. That you never hurt her. I stared at him. She told you that? He nodded. Yeah. Look, I'm not defending her, but have you paid attention to her at all the last few years? Did you ever ask what she needed? I felt something crack inside me. I stood up, fists clenched. You think this is my fault? My voice was rising. Is that what she told you? That your old man forced her to do this? He stood too, arms raised, palms out. No, I'm saying this is complicated. You never talk, Dad. You never share anything. Mom said she tried, but you just brush her off, bury yourself in your projects. Maybe if you'd listened. That's when I lost it. Don't you dare! I snapped, jabbing a finger at him. Don't you dare blame me. You want to pick her side, go ahead. But don't come here telling me I'm the reason she let some idiot into our house. David's face went red. I'm not picking sides, Dad. But you have to admit you might share some blame. You can't just smash the house and pretend she's the only one. I roared. Get out! My voice echoed off the walls. Even Linda gasped. David stepped back, his face a mix of anger and fear. I was shaking all over, blood pounding in my temples. He tried to say something else, but I just repeated. Get out. Both of you. I'm done. Linda looked at me, tears streaming, and whispered, Frank, but I turned away. David grabbed his coat, mumbled something under his breath. Then he guided Linda out of the den. I heard him say, Mom, let's give him some space. She sobbed softly, and they left me there, shaking with rage. That was how our family meeting ended. No resolution, no plan. Just anger, bitterness, heartbreak. And a big, black emptiness where my marriage used to be. A few hours after that blowout, the house went dead silent again. David stayed at a motel or something. Linda shut herself in the guest room. I sat in the den with my head in my hands, replaying every second of that conversation. I'd never yelled at my son like that before. Especially not as a grown man. But hearing him say it was partly my fault, like I was to blame for what she did, felt like a knife in the gut. Sleep didn't come easy that night. I dozed off sometime after midnight on the den couch. Woke up at dawn, stiff neck, pounding headache. My first thought was, I've got to get out of this house. Every corner, every smell, reminded me of that moment, her kneeling there, him looking down at her. The broken furniture. The shame. The fury. I found Linda in the kitchen, sipping coffee. She looked like she'd been crying all night, eyes puffy, face drawn. I ignored her, grabbed some water. She spoke quietly. Frank, we need to talk. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I don't want to talk. Not right now. She swallowed, set her mug down. I just want you to know, I'm sorry for everything. But I also. I held up a hand. Don't. I told you. Not now. She opened her mouth, closed it, then nodded. She looked like she wanted to crumble. Part of me felt a stab of pity, but I shoved it away. I left her there, got dressed, threw some clothes in a duffel bag. I had an old trailer in the backyard, nothing fancy, a small camping trailer I'd used a few times for fishing trips. It was road-ready enough. I hitched it to my truck, grabbed some supplies from the garage, loaded a cooler of food and water, and walked out. Linda came to the driveway, tears in her voice. Where are you going? I didn't look at her. North, I said, which was true enough. I planned to drive up toward the lakes, maybe further. Just away from here. She took a step forward. For how long? I shrugged. Don't know. She stood there, arms folded against herself. Frank, please. I got in the truck, turned the key, and pulled out. Didn't look back. My heart was pounding, but there was a grim satisfaction in leaving her behind with the ruins. No goodbyes, no closure. Just me and my bitterness heading north. The next month was a blur. I drove without much of a plan, stopping at cheap campgrounds or off-the-beaten-path spots where I could park the trailer. Slept when I felt like it, fished a bit in random streams. Spent hours just sitting by a fire pit, staring into the flames, letting my thoughts swirl. I tried not to think about Linda or David, but they were always there in the back of my mind, like a dull ache that wouldn't go away. Sometimes I'd get so angry I'd punch the side of the trailer or throw a rock into the woods. Other times I'd feel this deep sadness that practically paralyzed me. I had no schedule, no responsibilities, no one to answer to. Part of me found that freeing. But mostly it felt hollow. Like I was running from something I couldn't escape. A few times, I almost picked up my phone to call David. To tell him, what? That I missed him? That I hated what he said, but I still love him because he's my son. But I never dialed. Pride, maybe? Or fear. I kept my phone off most of the time anyway. Didn't want messages or voicemails. I figured Linda would call eventually, or David would. But I didn't check. I'd turn it on once every few days, see if there was anything urgent, then power it back off. Mostly, there were missed calls from home, or from David's number. I never called back. By the third week, I found a little campsite near a big river. A quiet place, maybe a dozen other RVs or trailers. Retirees with nothing else to do. I'd step out in the morning, smell the pine trees and damp earth, watch the sunrise over the water. Some folks were friendly, invited me to join them for coffee, but I declined. I wasn't in the mood for small talk. I was just there to be alone. Nights were the worst. In the darkness, with nothing to distract me, the images would come back. Linda's face as I smashed the table, David's voice accusing me, that man's smirk. I'd stare at the stars and wonder what went wrong. Why I couldn't see it coming. If I'd become so dull and distant that Linda felt forced to find excitement elsewhere. The questions spun in circles. No answers came. Sometimes I'd remember the good days, when David was little and Linda and I had more laughter between us. We'd do road trips in a beat-up sedan, or eat fast food by the highway and tease each other about the greasy burgers. We were broke back then, but we were close. Somewhere along the line, I guess we lost that. I lost it. Maybe that's what David meant. Maybe I really did stop listening. Hard to say. But at the same time, nothing justifies betrayal, right? She could have talked to me, told me she was unhappy, demanded therapy or a divorce or something. Instead, she found comfort with some jerk who sells light fixtures. The thought made my blood boil all over again. After a month or so on the road, I felt drained. Like the anger had burned itself out. Or maybe I was just tired of living out of a trailer. One morning, I packed up my campsite, threw out the trash, and decided to head back. Not because I had a plan, but because staying away wasn't fixing anything. I figured I'd face whatever was left. Maybe pack up for good, file for divorce, who knows? I just needed to see what was happening at the house. I drove the whole day, stopping only for gas. By the time I pulled into my hometown, it was late afternoon. The neighborhood looked the same, mowed lawns, cars and driveways. I turned down our street, slowed as I reached our address. Something was off. At first, I thought I got the wrong place. Because the house looked empty, no curtains, no car in the driveway, the grass a bit overgrown. I parked in front. Stared at the for sale sign lying in the yard, knocked over, half buried in weeds. My chest tightened. What the hell? I muttered. The windows were dark, the front door locked. I walked around back. The yard was stripped bare, no lawn chairs, no grill. Everything was gone. I tried the back door. It was unlocked. I stepped in. The house echoed. No furniture, no boxes, just empty rooms. The living room floor was swept clean of broken glass. Walls were scuffed where pictures used to hang. It smelled stale, like no one had lived here for weeks. I stood there, confused. Then I remembered, it's all in my name. The mortgage, the deed, everything. So if anyone sold this house, it had to be me. But I didn't do anything. I never signed a paper. My mind spun, wondering if Linda forged something or if I'd spaced out so badly that I forgot. Neither made sense. Then it hit me, maybe Linda walked away, and the sign was from some old attempt to sell. But no. This sign looked fresh, the phone number crisp. I walked through the house, searching for clues. In the kitchen, I found a single envelope taped to the cabinet. I tore it open. It was a statement from the bank, my account. But the balance was 0. My throat went dry. I checked the date, just a week ago. The account we'd shared was drained. And it was done legitimately, my name typed on the withdrawal form. But I sure as hell didn't do it. Or had I? I couldn't piece it together. I was missing something. The synopsis in my head was: I came back, found the house sold, no word, no paper. But it had to be me. The deed was in my name. Linda couldn't sell it on her own unless I signed something or gave her power of attorney. But I sure never did that. I paced the empty living room, confusion turning into anger. I thought about calling the bank, a lawyer, somebody. Then I realized my phone was dead. Great. I rummaged around in the trailer for a charger, plugged it into an outlet in the hallway. No power. The electricity must have been shut off. The place was basically deserted. That's when I noticed a small stack of mail on the floor by the front door. A letter from the county clerk's office, addressed to me. Another from an escrow company. My heart pounded as I opened them. All that legal jargon, times and dates for a property sale. A notice of final transfer of funds. Large sums. My name, Linda's name. The date was just days prior. My signature was there, but it sure wasn't my handwriting. Something in me cracked. She sold the house. She must have faked my signature or worked out some scheme with the so-called buyer. My mind raced. She took everything? Moved in with that guy? But why? Then I realized maybe she'd done it to cut me out. Or maybe they planned to buy another place. But wait, the bank statement said the money was withdrawn, closed. Maybe Linda took it. Or maybe it had been moved somewhere else? None of this made sense. All I knew was, the house was empty, the accounts were emptied. No furniture, no sign of Linda, no sign of David. I stood there in the silence, feeling a hot wave of betrayal all over again. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls. I used my truck charger to juice my phone a bit, tried calling Linda, no answer. Tried David, no answer. Called the bank, got an automated line. Everything was closed for the day. I sat in that dead house, the setting sun casting long shadows across the bare floors. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Eventually, I just gave up. The house was no longer mine in any practical sense, even if my name was on the papers. I was locked out of everything. I went to the trailer, parked in the driveway. I sat there in the dark, a single lantern for light, trying to piece it together. My anger was volcanic. She cheated, destroyed our marriage, and now wiped me out. That's what I believed in that moment. By dawn, I decided, if that's how she wants to play it, fine. I'd figure out a way to get the money. Lawyers, or some legal route. But a bigger part of me just felt done. Tired. Like something snapped inside, and I couldn't muster the strength to fight. I stayed there a day or two, making calls, learning the truth. The sale had gone through in my name. The money had been deposited and then withdrawn. Linda was nowhere to be found. David didn't respond to texts or calls. For all I knew, they'd run off together, mother and son, though that made no sense. But in my fury, I believed all sorts of crazy scenarios. On the third day, I made a final decision: let it all burn. I wouldn't chase the money. I wouldn't chase her. I wouldn't call the cops. I'd take what I had, my trailer, my truck, a bit of cash and another small account Linda didn't know about, and move on. She could have the rest. If that's what she wanted, she could start a new life with that guy. I was done. I didn't want to see or hear from either of them. So I towed my trailer out of there. Didn't look back at the empty shell that used to be my home. In my mind, it was gone. The marriage was gone. Everything. And that was that. Except, there was a twist I never saw coming. A day later, I was driving up the highway, heading God knows where, when my phone buzzed. I had just enough battery to see a missed call from an unknown number. Then a voicemail. I pulled over at a rest stop, listened with the windows down. It was Linda's voice, shaky. "Frank, I know you hate me. But I want you to know the truth. I sold the house because it was in your name. That's what you wanted, right? To get rid of everything? You told me once that if anything happened between us, you'd leave me with nothing. Well, you did. You took the money, Frank. I don't know how you did it, but the accounts are all empty. You changed the passwords, you changed the details. You left me and him with nothing. I guess you got your revenge. I hope you're happy." David's upset. He tried to talk to you. You won't answer. So, goodbye. I sat there stunned. She thinks I took everything? That I sold the house? But I just found out she sold it. Now her voicemail says I did it? My mind spun. Who sold the damned house? Who took the money? She believed it was me. I believed it was her. Was someone forging signatures on both sides? I thought of that scumbag. Lighting guy. Maybe he had resources or connections. Maybe he manipulated Linda. Maybe Linda manipulated him. I had no answers. I tried calling her back. No response. I tried David again. Straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice shaking. "David, it's Dad. I don't know what the hell is going on, but call me back. I didn't take anything. I didn't sell the house. I need answers." No callback. Hours passed. Days. I found a cheap RV park to stay at, plugging into their electricity so I could keep my phone charged. I kept trying, but nothing. Linda's phone was off, David's phone was off, or they were ignoring me. I was alone with a bizarre scenario: the house sold, money gone, each side blaming the other. I felt like a character in a bad movie. After a week of that, I got a letter forwarded to my P.O. box from the county's real estate office. It basically confirmed the sale, with my signature. I had a meltdown in that post office parking lot. Kicked my truck tire, threw a wad of mail on the ground, cursed the day I was born. Then I realized maybe this was some identity theft or some scheme, orchestrated by that man she was with. But Linda's voicemail suggested she believed I had done it first. So maybe he told her a lie, said I was the one who took the money. Meanwhile, from my vantage point, it seemed like she sold everything. The reality was likely that the two of us got played. Or maybe we played each other. I didn't have the energy to figure it out. One thing was clear: Linda and that man didn't have the money. Or else she wouldn't have left me that bitter voicemail. She claimed they had nothing. Meanwhile, I obviously didn't have it either. So the money was gone, just vanished, along with our house, our furniture. And we were both left with zip. If that was revenge, it was a hell of a twisted one. In my final call attempt, I left Linda a message. Listen, I don't know what happened. But I don't have the money, and I sure as hell didn't sign those papers. Whoever did, they played us both. I'm sorry for everything else, but this is out of my hands now. Good luck. That was the last message I ever left her. She never replied. Days turned to weeks. I forced myself to stop thinking about it. I had no real recourse. My savings were minimal, the joint account was drained, and proving forgery or fraud would cost more in legal fees than I had. The house was gone. Linda was gone, presumably with that guy, or maybe she'd left him too. David was silent, maybe siding with her, maybe stuck in the middle. I didn't know. I told myself I didn't care anymore. Maybe I was lying to myself. I drifted from one campground to another, picking up odd jobs for cash under the table. Painting fences, fixing old decks. The kind of work I used to do more formally, but now it was just day labor. Enough to buy gas, some groceries, pay the RV spot fees. I had no permanent address except a P.O. box. On paper, I barely existed anymore. One afternoon, while repairing a dock near a small lake, I had a flashback to the day I taught David how to fish. He was about 8, full of questions. Linda was there too, wearing a sun hat, reading a magazine, occasionally looking up to smile at us. We were happy then. That memory stabbed me in the gut. I had to stop hammering for a moment because my hands were trembling. I realized I wasn't just angry at Linda or that lighting guy. I was furious at David too. For picking that moment to lecture me, for telling me I never listened, for not understanding the betrayal I felt. But mostly, I was angry at myself for maybe proving him right. Had I really drifted so far that I didn't see my wife's unhappiness? Then again, does that excuse her infidelity? No. But it made everything more complicated. I tried to swallow that anger, keep working, keep moving. Some nights, though, it boiled up, and I'd toss and turn in the trailer, wishing I could talk to someone, anyone, about what happened. But I didn't. Because who would believe this story? It sounded like a soap opera. And I was never the type to bare my soul. Even now, telling you this, I'm leaving out half the stuff swirling in my head. It's too much to say out loud. Around that time, maybe a month after the house fiasco, I got one more voicemail, from David. It came in after midnight. He sounded tired, like he'd been drinking. Dad, I don't know if you'll get this. Mom's with him, that guy. They're staying in some rented place. She says you took everything, and she's stuck. She's crying all the time. I tried telling her to call a lawyer, but she said it's pointless because it was in your name. Dad, I don't know what to believe. Part of me thinks maybe you did it. You always said you'd burn everything down if she ever crossed you. So maybe you did. If so, that's messed up, Dad. But if not, I'm sorry. I don't know what to do anymore. I wish this never happened. I listened to that voicemail about 5 times, each time feeling a new wave of anger and sadness. I never replied. Couldn't find the words. Let him believe what he wanted. If he wanted to think I was capable of that, fine. I was done defending myself. That's how it ended between me and my family. A swirl of accusations, confusion, phone calls that went nowhere. Our life was shattered, along with that living room table. If there was a final confrontation, a chance to set things right, I never got it. Everything just faded away. So now I'm here. Living in a trailer near the water, taking it day by day. It's been a few months since everything went to hell. You want to know if I'm happy? Hell no. I'm not happy. I'm not even sure what happiness looks like anymore. But I'm free in a weird sense. I fish in the mornings, cook what I catch if I feel like it, or just toss it back. If I want to sleep till noon, nobody's here to judge me. If I want to sit by the fire until 3 a.m., drinking cheap beer, that's my call. Does that solve anything? Not really. The hurt's still there, like a knot in my gut. Some nights, I dream about the life I had, my wife beside me, my son down the hall. The picket fence, the normal routine. Then I wake up in this cramped trailer, the wind rattling the thin windows, and I remember what happened. Feels like a punch every time. I could chase the truth about the house sale. Hire a private investigator, lawyers, try to track down that missing money. Maybe prove Linda or that guy scammed me, or that we both got scammed. But for what? Pride? To recoup some lost property? I don't have the fight in me anymore. I've always been a man of action, picking up a hammer, solving problems with elbow grease. But this is a tangle of legal BS and personal betrayal. No hammer can fix that. Sometimes, folks at the RV park invite me to join their potlucks or watch a game on a small TV in someone's camper. I go occasionally, just to have a little human contact. It's nice to sit with strangers who don't know my past, who don't look at me with pity or judgment. We talk about the weather, the cost of gas, who caught the biggest fish. It's shallow conversation, but it's a break from my head. Then I go back to my trailer, close the door, and the silence rushes in. I've gotten used to that silence. It's heavy, but it's mine. Sometimes, I'll take a walk at dusk, let the gravel crunch under my boots, watch the sun dip behind the trees. The world keeps turning, like it doesn't give a damn about my problems. There's a cold comfort in that. Nobody to answer to, no schedules. Just me, nature, and the echoes in my mind. I haven't heard from Linda since that voicemail where she accused me of taking everything. I haven't heard from David since his drunk message telling me he didn't know what to believe. Maybe they're still living in that rented place, struggling. Maybe she's with the lighting guy, cursing my name. Maybe David's trying to juggle loyalties, but leans toward his mom. I don't know. I'm not about to call and find out. If they want to think I sabotaged them, let them. If they realize they got conned or that none of us ended up winning, that's their burden to carry. I'm done playing the scapegoat, or the avenger. People might say I should talk to my son, explain my side, salvage that relationship. I've thought about it. But every time I picture him saying, "You never listened to Mom," I feel that anger rise again. Because maybe I didn't. Maybe I was too busy with my own routine, my tools, my quiet ways. But that doesn't excuse what she did. And it doesn't excuse how he came at me, pointing fingers. I know he's grown, but he's still my boy. I wanted him to see my pain, not just hers. But he didn't. Or couldn't. Either way, the rift is too wide now. I'm not ready to build a bridge. Maybe one day. Not today. So I stay here living a half-life, but it's the only life I've got. I pass the time fixing random things, my camper door, the squeaky hinges, recaulking the seams. I built a small wooden porch step outside the trailer. Looks decent. Painted it an off-white color that I had left over in a paint can. Reminds me of the day I was painting the garage. Before everything exploded. Before I became the man who swings a sledgehammer at his own living room. Sometimes, I look at that sledgehammer in the back of my truck, and I feel a surge of shame. It's got flecks of paint still on the handle, a bit of glass embedded near the metal head. I can't bring myself to clean it up or throw it away. It's like a reminder of a single moment that changed everything. Part of me wants to keep it forever, a monument to the day I realized my marriage was dead. I don't have regrets about smashing that stuff. Is that strange to say? If I could rewind, I don't know that I'd do it differently. Maybe I'd handle it with more dignity. But that rage was real, honest. More honest than the quiet disinterest we'd had for years. In that sense, it felt like the only genuine expression I had left. So no, I'm not proud, but I'm not exactly sorry either. It's just something that happened, and it can't be undone. I wish I could tell you there was some neat conclusion, that I found peace or redemption. But life isn't tidy. Sometimes you're left with a handful of ashes and no idea how to carry them. That's me right now. Carrying ashes in a beat-up trailer, spending mornings on the water, nights staring at the stars, still wondering what the hell went wrong. Linda and him, maybe they're happy, maybe they're miserable. Doesn't change my situation. David, he's a grown man. He can decide who he believes, or if he believes both of us were fools. Part of me misses him, misses the days we toss a football around or work on his car together. But life moves on. He'll figure out who he wants to keep in his life. So will I. I'm not telling this story for pity or applause. I'm just telling it because it's the truth. It's what happened. No point in dressing it up or toning it down. A man in his 50s finds out his wife's cheating, loses his temper, smashes the house, then everything unravels. That's it. That's me. That's my life. And now I live in this old trailer, with a small propane stove, a rickety bed, a fishing rod, and a cooler of beer. My retirement is a far cry from what I imagined, but maybe I never imagined much to begin with. I'm just drifting. Not better, not worse, just here. I guess that's the end of it. I wish there was something more profound to say. Something that wraps it all up with a bow. But I don't have that. All I have is each new day, each new cast of the fishing line, each new night listening to the wind. This is where I landed after the storm. I've accepted it. Or I'm trying to, anyway. So that's my story. That's all. I'm done talking now.